why are those residential real estate prices going up? And the same thing's happening in the United States. The answer is that there is an exodus, and I don't think that's too strong a word, out of the cities. People are put off by, cities have always been a trade-off. Cities are, okay, you have a lot of noise and some dirt and some hassles and maybe a slightly higher crime rate. But on the other hand, you have art and culture and museums and shows and restaurants and bars. And so you make the trade-off. You say, I'll accept these annoyances in exchange for all this, culture and buzz. And cities attract, the brightest people. So whether it's, bankers or lawyers or doctors or artists, playwrights, actors, whatever, it's just, there's a lot of buzz. And that's why people go to cities. With these lockdowns, we've amplified all the negatives and taken away all the positives. We've shut the museums, the restaurants, the bars, the plays, the office buildings, things that attracted people. But meanwhile, again, probably not as bad in Australia as it is here, but crime is on the rise. Murder rate in New York has doubled. Suicide rates across the country have tripled. And that's New York. The suicide rate's national. There are all these dysfunctions, and a lot of them, and of course, when you have highly concentrated populations, which you do in cities, a lot of that's worse. So what people are doing, I say people, it's the people who can afford it. They're getting out of the cities and they're going to nearby suburbs or even further out, what we call exurbs, which are, the next ring beyond the suburbs. And so there is that demand for housing. I'd be willing to bet money that the place you're describing is a pretty attractive neighborhood. So they're booming, and the same thing's true in the United States. But what's the other side of that? We're depopulating our cities. Cities are the greatest wealth generating phenomena in the history of civilization. That's what civilization means. It means cities. And so if we're depopulating and draining our wealth creating engine, what does that do to the economy in the long run? So as an individual choice, it makes sense and I understand it. But the macro effect is we're depopulating these wealth generating places. Just take any downtown area. It could be Melbourne or Adelaide or Sydney or New York for that matter. If there's an attractive downtown office building, let's say you're a large company, insurance company, whatever, and you used to have 10 floors as your corporate headquarters. Well, now everyone's been working from home for almost a year. That's nothing that anyone would have recommended, a year ago. But we were forced to do it, and guess what? It works. Employers and employees are finding that, hey, it works. You can communicate and get stuff done, and maybe there's some attractions to it. So this work from home thing is here to stay. Companies will do, they'll say, well, instead of 10 floors, I only need 2 floors, and I'll have attractive offices, but you'll reserve them. You'll call up and say, hey, I need an office 2 days next week to meet some clients. Done. They'll build locker rooms. They won't be like high school locker rooms. They'll be very attractive. You'll keep your laptop and your sweater and your scarf or whatever in your locker. You'll show up, take your stuff out of your locker. Some receptionist will tell you which office is yours for those 2 days. Set yourself up, meet your clients, go home and work from home. What does that mean? If you cut commercial real estate capacity or utilization by 80%, we'll start with the cleaning crew and the reception, but what about the food trucks, the restaurants, the shopping, the public transportation, drinks after work, on and on and on, all the things that are ancillary to that downtown office location. You cut that by 50 to 80%. What is that doing to your economy? So these are examples. And by the way, this will take a year to play out. This is not an overnight thing. So the tenants are not paying rent. If they are, they've called up and negotiated a 50% increase. I have some involvement in commercial real estate, and I see this in real time. So rents are down by perhaps half or all the way to zero if they're not paying. And everyone says, well, landlords are rich. No, they're not. The landlords take the rents, but they have mortgages. So if the tenants aren't paying the landlords can't pay the mortgagee, and that falls on the banks, right? Except the banks are clever. They've securitized it and sold it probably to you and me, right? We have our 401ks like a superannuation fund, but you look in the fund and do you have some, commercial real estate REIT or something that Morgan Stanley sold you? Well, maybe you do. And what's inside? No one knows, but take a look. But that ripple effect I just described can take a year to play out. So we haven't seen the end of this. So the bottom line on all this is that interest rates are going up in anticipation of inflation based on handouts. The reality is the handouts are not being spent, they're being saved, which does nothing for inflation. And it's also not sustainable, which is what are you going to do? Hand out a $2 trillion deficit spending package every 6 months? Because that's kind of what we've been doing since last summer. And they keep saying, well, this is the last one. It'll be sustainable. It's not sustainable. It's a handout and people need the money. But if they put it in the bank, which they're doing, this is a classic liquidity trap. So what's going to happen? Yeah. But meanwhile, the interest rates are going up, perhaps for the wrong reason, but they're going up. That's going to slow the economy further. We're already seeing mortgage applications dry up. We're seeing the housing bubble, not bubble, but pretty steep increase in residential housing starting to level up. So by, hard to say, but I would say by March or April, this whole thing is going to go in reverse. Everything we just talked about is going to go in reverse. The economy is not going to have the traction. Unemployment is going to remain high. Velocity is going to continue to drop. There's not going to be any inflation. Those interest rates are headwind. They're going to drop, and the price of gold is going to shoot up. So my advice to potential gold investors is it's on sale. Go get some right now. It's always better to buy low and sell high. And but I would expect the price to be much higher by mid-year.
I know that you've said this before, or I'm pretty sure you've said this before, that to stimulate an economy, you need to reduce interest rates by somewhere around 3-4% to have an effect. When interest rates are currently at zero, how can you do that? Where do you go from zero?
Well, a couple of things. The short answer is you can't. You in theory, you can go to negative rates, but negative rates don't work. We have experience from the ECB, Sweden, Japan, Switzerland, and elsewhere that negative rates don't work. They're negative rates, but they don't. It's not more of the same. Cutting rates from 3% to zero has a beneficial effect, but cutting them from 0 to -1. Now you're through the looking glass. You don't get any more pop. You don't get any more bang for the buck. And there are reasons for that, which are as a central bank, what signal are you sending? Well, see, the idea of negative rates is you're going to spend the money. Because if I'm going to take it away, you put money in the bank, even at 0, you put money in the bank, you go away for a year, come back, the same amount of money should be there. That's the 0 interest rate. But a negative interest rate, -1%, you put $100,000 in the bank, you go away for a year, you come back, you only have $99,000. Because I took $1,000, that's 1% negative interest. So the idea is, if I'm going to take your money, you're going to spend it fast because you don't want me to take your money. And that's going to have the stimulative effect that we talked about. That's not actually what happens. What happens, two things. Number one, people have lifetime goals. Their retirement, their healthcare, their parents' healthcare, their children's education, buying a house. There's some large lifetime goal you have, and that's why you save money in the first place. If I'm taking your money away, you're going to save more, not less. You still want to achieve that goal. I've made it more difficult, but you're actually going to save more. They want you to spend it, but now you're saving more. And the second thing is, what signal is a central bank sending when they have negative interest rates? They're saying that they're worried about deflation, not inflation, but deflation. Yeah. So if central bank is telling me that deflation is a problem, I'm going to wait. And why should I buy anything right now? Wait till the price drops. And by the way, a negative interest rate, -1%, my example, is a nominal phenomena. But in real terms, if you have deflation, my money is worth more. So even though my dollar amount may be less, my purchasing power went up because prices went down. And so that's why negative interest rates don't work, because A, you're sending a deflation signal, so people defer spending, and B, they have lifetime goals, so they actually save more. So negative rates don't work. So you're right, you're stuck at 0, there you are. Pardon me, you can do QE, you can do quantitative easing. And usually what happens is they hand the ball over, I don't know if it's a rugby match or whatever, but they hand the ball from monetary policy, which is now impotent, to fiscal policy, which is deficit spending. But there you have other kinds of headwinds having to do with very high debt levels. More to the point, in terms of what a central bank can actually do, they can't stimulate. They can print money, and governments can spend money and incur deficit spending. But again, none of it does any good if people don't actually spend it, and that's a psychological phenomenon. And the Fed or the Reserve Bank of Australia or any central bank can print money, no doubt about it, but they can't change people's psychology. We had an external shock, an exogenous shock in the form of the pandemic that caused people to stop spending, save more, or they were unemployed. Or if you're the unemployed individual, you're not taking your friends out for dinner these days. You're putting money in the bank, and even if you still have your job, you're going to save money. because you're worried you might be next. You might be the next one to get laid off, or your company might shut down next week or next month. And so you're going to save more. It's what economists call precautionary savings, or, in plain English, saving for a rainy day. And that's what's going on. It's going on all over the world.